Snowflakes drifted lazily through the crisp December air, settling on the frosted windows of the old Larson farmhouse. From the outside, the home looked warm and inviting, its roof crowned with twinkling Christmas lights, the chimney puffing with the scent of cedar logs burning. But inside, beneath the glow of golden garlands and wreaths, tension hung heavier than any ornament on the tree. Evelyn Larson, 74 years old, sat quietly in her worn rocking chair. Her hands, frail but steady, clutched a faded photograph of past Christmas mornings. The voices of children, now grown and distant, echoed faintly in her memory. She had always imagined her farmhouse would remain the anchor of the family, a place where laughter and cinnamon rolls would mark every holiday. Instead, she felt like a stranger in her own living room. The creak of the front door broke her thoughts. Her eldest son, David, stepped inside, brushing snow from his jacket. His wife trailed behind him, lips pursed, eyes sharp. Evelyn caught the kind of look that wasn't meant to carry joy or warmth. "Mom," David began, carefully, like someone preparing to step across a frozen lake. "We need to talk before the holiday." Evelyn's heart sank. She already knew. Mothers always know. David's wife, Sherelle, folded her arms and spoke more bluntly. "You can't stay here for Christmas. It's time we make new traditions with our family." The words cut sharper than any blizzard wind. Evelyn's fingers tightened around the photograph, her knuckles white. She had given them this roof, sheltered them in storms, and even mortgaged her savings to help David through his business troubles. And now, in the heart of winter, she was being told she no longer belonged. Her voice trembled, but her eyes did not. "This is my house. My name is on the deed. You don't get to erase me from Christmas." A silence followed, filled only by the ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner. Cheryl smirked, as though Evelyn's words carried no weight. The family decided, "It's better this way. You can visit next year, maybe." Evelyn's chest burned. She glanced at the Christmas tree, its branches sagging under decades of ornaments, hand-painted stars, wooden angels her late husband carved, and a glass bauble with 1972 etched in gold. Every piece was history, a testament that she was the family. "You forgot something," Evelyn said softly, rising slowly from her chair. Though her body ached with age, her voice carried a steady edge. "The deed isn't in David's name. It isn't in yours. It's mine. This house, this land, they belong to me." David looked uncomfortable, shifting his weight. Cheryl scoffed. "That can't be true. You signed it over, remember?" Evelyn's lips curled into the faintest of smiles. Her late husband, Harold, had always told her, "Never sign away your home, Evie. A house is more than wood and nails, its protection." She had listened. "Would you like to see the papers?" Evelyn asked, her voice calm but icy. The room fell into stunned silence again, the only sound, the crackling fire. Evelyn turned and slowly walked down the hallway toward her bedroom. She opened the cedar chest at the foot of her bed, the very chest her mother had once filled with quilts. Inside, carefully folded, was a manila envelope. She ran her fingers along the edge before lifting it out. As she carried it back into the living room, she could feel their eyes on her. David's expression faltered. Cheryl's face paled. Evelyn laid the envelope on the coffee table, sliding the papers out with deliberate care. The crinkling sound of the old documents filled the air, louder than any Christmas carol. "Read it," she said simply. David hesitated before picking it up. His eyes scanned the page, and with every line, the blood drained from his face. Cheryl snatched it from him, flipping through the notarized signatures, the county stamp, and the legal seal. Evelyn stood tall, her silver hair glowing in the firelight, her voice steady as stone. "This house is mine. It always has been, and you will never, ever tell me I don't belong in it again." The room went quiet. The smell of cedar smoke and gingerbread cookies clung to the air, almost mocking the bitterness that now brewed between them. Cheryl dropped the papers back onto the table with a snap. "This isn't over," she hissed. Evelyn leaned forward, her rocking chair creaking as she sat down again. She folded her hands, her face unreadable. "No," she said softly, "it's just beginning." The Christmas lights outside twinkled innocently, but inside, the storm had just begun. Evelyn knew the battle lines were drawn, and she was ready to fight for more than just a holiday. She was fighting for her dignity, her past, and the very home that carried the Larson name. And deep down, as the fire popped and cracked, she knew one thing, with chilling certainty. Secrets had a way of coming out, and hers would change everything. The following morning, Evelyn awoke to the sound of car doors slamming outside. For a moment, she thought it might be the neighbors, but when she peeked through the lace curtain, she saw 3 cars in her driveway, all familiar. Her children, her grandchildren, and her daughter-in-law's siblings. They had come early, uninvited, as if to stake a claim. Evelyn's chest tightened. This wasn't going to be a Christmas gathering filled with laughter. This was an ambush. By the time she shuffled into the kitchen, the house was already full of voices. Her youngest daughter, Denise, stood by the counter, avoiding eye contact. Evelyn noticed the way her hands fidgeted, her voice low as she muttered to Cheryl. Her other son, Michael, sat heavily in the armchair, scrolling on his phone, pretending not to hear the tension rising. "Morning, Mom," David said flatly, as though nothing had happened last night. "We figured we'd start decorating early this year." Evelyn glanced around. Already, Cheryl had pulled out boxes of ornaments, not Evelyn's carefully preserved ones, but shiny new baubles from some big box store. Evelyn's ornaments, the ones tied to memories, had been shoved aside in a plastic tub. Her blood simmered. "Those ornaments don't belong here," she said firmly. Cheryl smirked. "Traditions need updating. Families change." Evelyn took a step forward, her voice calm but unwavering. "Families don't erase their roots to make room for plastic." A heavy silence fell. Even the grandchildren froze, their little hands clutching strings of tinsel. Evelyn caught the way Denise looked down, guilt flickering across her face. Michael sighed loudly and muttered, "Here we go again." Evelyn refused to let the moment pass. She walked toward the coffee table, where the deeds still lay from last night. She tapped it once with her finger. "This house isn't a free-for-all, it has an owner. And unless I've suddenly forgotten my own name, that owner is me." David's jaw tightened. "You're making this harder than it has to be. We're trying to move forward as a family, and you're holding us back." The words stung. Evelyn thought of every night she had stayed up with sick children, every holiday meal she had cooked alone after Harold passed, and every sacrifice she had made to keep this house afloat. And now they stood before her, treating her like an obstacle. "Forward," she asked bitterly. "You mean without me?" Her voice cracked, but her eyes stayed sharp. The grandchildren shifted uncomfortably. One of them, little Anna, tugged at her mother's sleeve. "But Grandma always makes Christmas," she whispered. Evelyn's heart swelled at the child's innocent words, but Cheryl silenced her with a sharp glance. "Go play in the other room," she ordered. Evelyn straightened. "You've all forgotten something important," she said slowly, letting the words sink in. "This house isn't just walls and floors, it's a trust. Harold and I built it to last for generations. And I never told you this, but the will," she stopped herself. The room went still. Every eye locked on her. "The will?" Michael asked carefully, leaning forward. Evelyn hesitated. Harold had been wise. Before his passing, he had made her executor of the estate. And buried in that will was a clause when her children didn't know about. She had never revealed it because she thought she'd never have to. But now, standing in the shadow of betrayal, she wondered if it was time. Cheryl's voice cut in, sharp and impatient. "What about the will?" Evelyn's lips pressed into a thin line. She could feel the weight of Harold's words echoing in her ears. "When the time comes, Evie, you'll know. The paper will protect you. But only use it if you must." She wasn't ready to reveal it. Not yet. Instead, she glanced at the clock on the mantel. "I'll tell you when it matters. But until then, remember this. You don't make the rules here. I do." The air thickened with tension. Cheryl's face flushed red. "You're bluffing. You've got nothing." But Evelyn saw the flicker of doubt in her son's eyes. He remembered Harold's meticulous nature, his love for details, and his stubborn streak. If Harold had left something behind, it would be airtight. David cleared his throat, trying to regain control. "Mom, this doesn't have to turn ugly. We can all make this easier if you just step aside this Christmas. Stay at Denise's for a while. We'll manage the house." Evelyn felt her stomach drop. That was their plan, to edge her out quietly, one Christmas at a time, until she was gone altogether. Her rocking chair creaked as she sat down, her voice low but full of steel. "You may try to push me out, but I am not leaving my home. Not for Christmas. Not ever." A silence spread again, heavy and dangerous. The fire popped loudly, sparks leaping against the grate like echoes of the war Evelyn knew was coming. For the first time, her children looked at her not as their mother, but as an opponent. And Evelyn realized that the battle wasn't just about ornaments, or dinner, or even Christmas. It was about control. And the truth about the will, the truth she had held close for years, was the one weapon they could never expect. The rest of that day passed under a cloud. Evelyn could feel the tension in every corner of the house. The tree, half decorated with Cheryl's glittery ornaments and half bareware, Evelyn had stopped them, stood like a battlefield. The air smelled faintly of cinnamon from the cookies Evelyn had baked, but no one dared touch them. After lunch, Evelyn retreated to her study, a small oak-paneled room at the back of the house, lined with shelves and the heavy desk Harold had once worked at. She closed the door behind her and leaned against it, pressing a hand to her chest. Her heart still beat strong, but she knew age wasn't kind. She wasn't afraid of leaving this world. She was afraid of leaving her legacy in the wrong hands. The desk drawer creaked open as she pulled it out. Inside, wrapped in an old envelope, yellowed by time, lay Harold's will. Her fingers trembled as she touched it. She hadn't lied when she told them she was still in control. They didn't know the half of it. Clause 4. That was the one. Harold had written it after Denise's divorce, when family squabbles first began brewing. To ensure stability, he had told her. In the clause, Harold had named Evelyn's sole decision-maker regarding the house until her death. No sale, no transfer, and no change could happen without her explicit approval. And if any child attempted to force her out, that child's inheritance would be revoked. Evelyn closed the envelope carefully and slid it back into place. She wasn't ready to reveal it. Not yet. But knowing it was there gave her strength. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Grandma Anna's small voice floated through the door. Evelyn's chest warmed. She opened the door to see her granddaughter clutching a folded piece of paper. "Mom told me not to bother you," Anna whispered, "but I drew this for you." Evelyn unfolded the drawing. It was a shaky crayon sketch of the house, with snow on the roof and lights glowing from the windows. And in the center, drawn larger than anything else, was Evelyn herself smiling. Tears pricked Evelyn's eyes. "Thank you, sweetheart," she said softly, hugging the child. "This is the best gift I could ever get." But Cheryl's sharp voice rang from the living room. "Anna, leave her alone." The child flinched. Evelyn squeezed her hand before sending her back. Alone again, Evelyn sat at her desk, staring at the drawing. The children still needed her. That was all the reason she required. When evening fell, the family gathered for dinner. Evelyn set the roast on the table herself, refusing Cheryl's attempt to take over. The smell of herbs and garlic filled the room, but the conversation was tense, broken into half-sentences and sidelong glances. Finally, Denise spoke up, her voice hesitant. "Mom, maybe David has a point. Maybe it would be easier if you stayed with me for a little while, just for the holidays." Evelyn's fork clattered against her plate. She looked at her daughter, the one she thought she could still count on. Easier for whom? Denise. For me, or for all of you? Denise's eyes dropped. "It's not like that." "Oh, but it is," Evelyn said, her voice cutting through the room like glass. "You think I don't see what's happening. One step at a time. You push me aside until one day I wake up and this house isn't mine anymore. But it won't work. Not while I'm breathing." David leaned forward. "Mom, no one is taking the house. We're just—" "Stop lying," Evelyn snapped. The room went silent. "I know what you want. You want control. You want to sit at this table and make decisions like Harold and I never existed. But you forget Harold left me with more than memories. He left me with power. And when the time comes, you'll see exactly what that means." Her words hung heavy. Michael shifted uneasily, his voice low. "What are you talking about?" Evelyn smiled faintly, though her eyes were hard. "You'll find out soon enough." The family exchanged glances, suspicion etched across their faces. Cheryl frowned, whispering something to David, who shook his head as if to dismiss it. But Evelyn saw it. The seed of doubt had been planted. Later that night, after everyone had gone to bed, Evelyn stood by the window, watching snow drift softly against the glass. The house creaked, the old wood settling in the cold, and she whispered into the silence, "Don't worry, Harold. I won't let them take it from us." Behind her, the study door stood ajar, and inside, the drawer with the will wasn't quite as she had left it. Someone had been in there. Evelyn barely slept that night. She kept turning over the image in her mind. The desk drawer slightly ajar, the faint shift in how the envelope had been placed. For decades, she had guarded Harold's will like it was a lifeline, and no one had touched it. Until now. By morning, the storm outside had eased. Snow draped the hedges in smooth white layers, muffling the world beyond the house. Evelyn moved quietly through the halls, listening for sounds of life. Denise's children giggled faintly in the upstairs bedroom, and the smell of Cheryl's coffee wafted from the kitchen. She slipped into the study before anyone noticed. The drawer creaked again, a little too easily this time. She opened it and checked the envelope. Yes, it had been handled. The flap wasn't sealed the way she always left it. A page inside was slightly bent. Her chest tightened. Someone had read the will. Someone now knew about Clause 4. She slid the drawer shut and leaned against the desk, her breath heavy. Which one of them had done it? At breakfast, she studied each face carefully. David avoided her eyes, buttering his toast with unnecessary precision. Cheryl talked too loudly, her cheerfulness forced. Denise looked pale, nervous, as if she had been caught in some secret. Michael, however, kept glancing at her, curious, almost defiant. Mom, he said suddenly, setting down his mug. I think we need to talk about the future, about arrangements. The fork paused in Evelyn's hand. Arrangements. She repeated slowly. About the house, Michael said, voice calm but steady. We know you've kept Harold's will, and some of us may have looked at it. The room froze. Denise's hand jerked, spilling a little orange juice across the tablecloth. Cheryl's smile collapsed. David let out a low curse under his breath. Evelyn's gaze sharpened like a hawk's. You what? Michael didn't flinch. We had a right to know. We're his children too. And if you think you can hold this house over our heads forever, you dare, Evelyn hissed, rising from her chair. Her voice cracked like a whip, her anger shaking the chandelier above them. You dare break into my study, rifle through Harold's papers, and then tell me it was your right. Harold entrusted me with this house because he knew what you would become. Greedy, impatient, unworthy. Michael stood as well, jaw tight. No, Mom, he left you in control because he thought you'd be fair. But you're not being fair. You're hoarding it. You're using it like a weapon against your children. Evelyn's hand shook, gripping the back of her chair for support. This house is not a weapon, it's a promise. Harold and I built our life here. Every corner, every board, it carries his touch. You think I'll let it go while I'm still breathing? David finally spoke, voice low but cutting. Then what happens when you're gone? You're going to leave us a mess, Mom. You're going to make sure we're all at each other's throats. Evelyn's breath came hard and shallow. The room spun slightly, her heart pounding in her ears. She steadied herself, forcing her voice to calm. You talk of fairness, she said, but you don't understand. That you so carelessly invaded holds consequences. If any of you tries to force me out, you lose everything. Every cent Harold left you. That's the truth. The words landed like a thunderclap. Denise covered her mouth, eyes wide. Cheryl gasped audibly. David swore again, louder this time. Michael just stared, his expression unreadable. Lose everything, Cheryl whispered. That can't be true. It is, Evelyn said firmly. Clause 4, Harold made sure of it. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. The ticking of the old grandfather clock in the hall sounded louder than ever. Finally, Michael broke it with a bitter laugh. So, that's it. Harold didn't trust us, he trusted you. And you've been holding it over us like a sword for years. Evelyn's lips trembled. He trusted me to protect this family from itself, and I will. Michael shook his head slowly. Or maybe he just didn't know you'd use it to control us. He turned and walked out, the slam of the door echoing through the house. Denise followed, whispering something apologetic as she trailed after him. David muttered angrily and stormed away too, leaving Cheryl standing alone at the table, pale and shaken. Evelyn sank back into her chair, her whole body trembling. The house felt colder now, despite the fire burning in the hearth. She stared at the untouched plate of food before her. For the first time, the house didn't feel like a fortress. It felt like a battleground. And Evelyn knew, the war had only just begun. That night, the house was eerily quiet. Evelyn walked the upstairs hallway with a candle in hand, its flame flickering against the framed family portraits. The faces inside those frames stared back at her Harold in his wedding suit, the children when they were small, and Evelyn herself in younger, softer years. All of it seemed like another life. She paused at Michael's door. The murmur of voices seeped through, muffled but distinct. She leaned closer, her heart thudding. We can't let her keep doing this, Michael's voice whispered. She'll never give up control, David hissed. She's clinging to it until her last breath. Then we make her let go, Cheryl said sharply. Evelyn's breath caught. She pressed her palm against the cold wood of the door. Don't say that, Denise whispered nervously. She's still our mother. She stopped being our mother when she turned Harold's will into a prison sentence, Michael snapped. We all saw the clause. If we don't act together, we'll be left with nothing. She'll play us against each other until the day she dies. There was silence, broken only by Cheryl's shaky sigh. So, what do we do? Evelyn backed away, the floorboards creaking under her weight. She hurried into her bedroom and shut the door. Her candle flame trembled as much as her hands. They were scheming. Her own children, whispering in the dark, plotting against her. For the first time in decades, Evelyn felt fear in her own house. She sat at her vanity, staring into the mirror. The face that looked back at her was lined and weary, but her eyes still burned with the same fire Harold had once admired. She thought of his voice, deep and steady, the night they signed the will. Evelyn, they'll turn on each other. Protect the house, protect what matters, she had promised. And now, keeping that promise meant facing her own children as enemies. The next morning, Evelyn acted as though nothing was wrong. She brewed coffee, buttered toast, and set the table. But as she laid out the plates, she noticed something chilling. The silver heirloom spoons were missing. She searched the drawers. Gone. Her pulse quickened. Small things began disappearing throughout the day. Harold's old pocket watch, the porcelain vase from the parlor, and a stack of bonds she kept in a locked box. Each time she checked, the locks had been forced, and the items had vanished. By dusk, Evelyn could no longer deny it. Her children weren't just scheming, they were already taking what they thought was theirs. She confronted Cheryl first, catching her alone in the pantry. "Where's the watch?" Evelyn demanded. Cheryl froze, holding a jar of jam in her hands. "What? You heard me. Harold's watch. Don't you dare play dumb." Cheryl's eyes darted away. "I don't know what you're talking about." Evelyn stepped closer, her voice low and sharp. "I've kept this family intact for years. You think you can chip away at me by stealing trinkets?" That watch was Harold's heartbeat. His hands held it every day. "And you," Cheryl's composure cracked. "We deserve something, Mom. Something real. You sit in that study with your locked drawers and your secrets, and we're supposed to wait like children for scraps." Evelyn's jaw tightened. "You deserve respect, but you've chosen betrayal." Cheryl set the jar down hard on the shelf and brushed past her mother, muttering, "You can't hold on forever." That night, Evelyn locked every door, checked every window, and sat in the study with the will clutched to her chest. The house felt like a fortress under siege, and yet, deep down, she knew a fortress could fall from within. At midnight, she heard the sound of faint click. The study door handle is turning. Evelyn rose, her breath caught in her throat. Someone was trying to come in. She pressed her back against the desk, clutching the candle like a weapon, waiting for the door to creak open. And in that moment, she realized the battle for Harold's legacy had crossed a line. This was no longer about respect. It was survival. The morning sun streamed weakly through the curtains, but Evelyn hadn't slept. She sat in her armchair, the will resting in her lap, her candle long extinguished. The sound of that midnight attempt on her study door still echoed in her ears. She couldn't pretend anymore. Her children weren't just restless, they were dangerous. The house no longer felt like her sanctuary but a battlefield where whispers and betrayals crept behind every wall. She rose slowly, her bones aching but her spirit firm. Today would be the day. No more secrets, no more scheming in the shadows. She would confront them all. By noon, they were gathered in the dining room. Evelyn had called them herself, her voice carrying a command they could not refuse. The long oak table stretched between them, once the site of laughter and family dinners. Now, it felt like a court of judgment. Michael sat at the far end, arms folded tight, his jaw locked. Cheryl fidgeted with a napkin, avoiding her mother's gaze. David stared down at his hands, and Denise looked pale, caught between loyalty and fear. Evelyn placed the will in the center of the table. Its leather-bound folder gleamed in the sunlight. "You've all been waiting," she began, her voice steady but sharp, "waiting for me to falter, waiting for this house, this legacy, to crumble so you could divide the pieces. Well, I won't let it." Michael scoffed. "You think we don't see what you're doing? You're holding us hostage with that paper. You've turned Harold's will into your weapon." Evelyn's eyes narrowed. "This isn't my weapon, Michael. It's Harold's protection. He saw what greed could do to you. And he was right." Cheryl leaned forward, her face flushed. "We're not greedy. We just want what's ours. Do you know what it feels like to be treated like a child in your own father's house? This house isn't yours, Evelyn snapped. It never was. Harold gave it to me, and he trusted me to keep it safe until the time was right. David finally raised his eyes, his voice low but seething. And when will that be? When you're gone. When we're too old to care. Evelyn slammed her hand on the table, the sound cracking through the room like a gunshot. The wheel rattled against the wood. Enough. You've stolen from me. You've lied to me. You've tried to force your way into my study in the dead of night. Do you think I don't know? The room fell silent. Cheryl's lips parted in shock. Denise looked down in shame, and Michael's face hardened like stone. I am your mother, Evelyn said, her voice trembling but fierce. And I am the executor of this will. That means until the day I draw my last breath, everything Harold built stays under my protection. Not one penny, not one brick, leaves this house unless I say so. Denise whispered, Mom, please, we don't want to fight you. Evelyn turned to her youngest, her eyes softening for a brief moment. Then, stop letting them drag you into this madness. You still have a choice, Denise. Michael pushed back his chair, the legs scraping the floor. You think you can scare us into obedience, but you're alone, Mother. One day soon, you won't be able to stop us. He stormed out, Cheryl close behind. David hesitated, then followed. Only Denise remained, her eyes shimmering with tears. When the door closed, Evelyn exhaled, her strength draining from her body. She sank back into her chair, clutching the will to her chest. She had drawn her line in the sand. But as the echo of Michael's threat lingered in the air, Evelyn knew the battle wasn't over. It was only beginning. The days after that confrontation bled into one another, each heavy with unspoken threats. Evelyn kept the will close, never leaving it unattended. The once lively home had become a place of shadows and locked doors. Then, on Christmas Eve, the storm broke. It was late evening when Evelyn heard the front door slam. Michael's voice carried down the hall, loud and furious. Cheryl was with him, her tone sharp and bitter. David lingered behind, his footsteps hesitant, while Denise trailed quietly, her eyes darting with unease. Evelyn rose from her chair, the will tucked beneath her arm, and stepped into the parlor. Michael pointed at her, his face flushed with rage. This ends tonight. We're done waiting for you to die. Mother, give us the will. Hand it over. Cheryl's voice rose in echo, shrill with desperation. We're your children. You can't keep treating us like strangers in our own father's house. Evelyn stood tall, her frail frame glowing with an unexpected power. You've already made yourselves strangers, she said coldly. When you broke my trust. When you tried to force what wasn't yours. When you lost your place here. Michael lunged forward, but David caught his arm. Stop it, David barked, his voice breaking. Don't you see? This isn't who we are. Michael yanked free, his teeth clenched. You're weak, David. Always have been. Evelyn held up the will, her hand trembling but steady. Listen to me, all of you. Harold didn't choose me as executor by accident. He knew one of you would destroy everything, and he was right. The silence was thick, broken only by the crackle of the fire in the hearth. Denise stepped forward, her eyes wet. Mom, I don't want this. I don't care about the money. I just want my family back. For a flicker of a moment, Evelyn's stern mask softened. Then stand with me, Denise. Prove that love matters more than greed. Michael sneered. Love won't pay the bills. Love won't buy the house. He turned to Cheryl. Are you with me or not? Cheryl's lips trembled. For the first time, she looked uncertain. I don't know anymore, Michael. Evelyn took a deep breath, her voice clear and unshakable. If you cannot see the truth, then hear this. I am not afraid of you. I will not bend. This will is not yours. This house is not yours. And my soul is not yours to break. If you try to tear this family apart, the only inheritance you'll get is the memory of what you destroyed. The weight of her words filled the room. Even Michael's anger faltered. For a moment, he looked less like a man and more like a lost child, furious because he could not control the world around him. He turned abruptly, storming out into the night, his footsteps echoing down the porch steps. Cheryl followed slowly, her eyes cast to the floor. David remained frozen, guilt heavy on his shoulders. Denise crossed the room and wrapped her arms around her mother. I'm with you, she whispered. Evelyn held her daughter close, the will still clutched in her other hand. Her heart ached with sorrow, but also with pride. That night, she placed the will back into its locked drawer, but for the first time, she didn't fear its theft. She knew the paper itself didn't matter. What mattered was her strength to protect it. In the end, Evelyn realized the true inheritance she guarded wasn't money or property. It was dignity. It was the truth. It was the power to stand against betrayal, even when standing meant standing alone. And as she watched the snow fall gently outside her window, she whispered into the quiet night, "Harold, I kept my promise." The house, wrapped in silence, stood not as a battleground anymore, but as a testament to resilience.